How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Zayin, Daf 7 of Masechta BavaKama. Friends, yo friends, friends. Well, the first part of the Daf, we continue the Machlekes Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva that we got to yesterday, and then the next part of the Daf. The next part of the daf, it opens up a whole new discussion that's gonna go for a few days, and all I could say is So okay, we're gonna start on daf Vav Mud Beis, about 6-7 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Akiva Omer, got it, good. Rabbi Akiva Omer. Lo ba'akosuf ela legabos lenizokin min ha'idis v'kavachom elektrish. My oh my. Barara. Shnikes. Okay. Snap into it. Oof. Who could tell me what the machlokus between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel was? So what we ended with yesterday was we said that there's machlokus between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel in a situation where, right, so Ruvain's ox eats Shimon's field. So we say that Ruvain needs to pay back Shimon with the Edis, right? Of course, there are three types of field. Edis is the best, Beinonis is the middle, Ziboris is the worst. So there's three kinds of fields, and so Ruvain needs to pay back Shimon with Edis fields, with the best kinds of fields. So now we said that in a situation where it was Shimon's field that was eaten, Shimon's got a few fields, let's say. His best fields are only as good as Reuven the Tycoon's worst fields. So the shaila is, does Reuven, who needs to pay back Shimon, does he pay back with fields that are the equivalent of Shimon's field, which in the case of Reuven the Tycoon would be Reuven's worst fields, or, right, that would be B'denizak Shaminun, that we evaluate based on the damaged fellow's property, so based on Shimon's field, and therefore Reuven pays back Shimon from his least good field, because his least good field is as good as Shimon's best field. Or do we say, like Rabbi Akiva, that was Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, Rabbi Akiva, however, says that Reuven needs to pay back Shimon based on his own best fields, on Reuven the Tycoon's best fields. Now, as you can imagine, that's field sheba field. So he's got to pay back from that. So that was how we understood the machlokes yesterday. So now, Rabbi Akiva had then said v'kavachomer lehektish, I believe is what he said. V'kavachomer lehektish. And certainly when it comes to hektish, we have to understand exactly what's going on over here. So Rabbi Akiva Omer says, Rabbi Akiva, lo ba'akosov legabos lenizokim min ha'idis, that the pasuk is coming to say that Shimon collects from Edis, and we wanted to understand yesterday what that means is that Rabbi Akiva's betzim saying that Shimon collects from Reuven's Edis, that b'demazik shaminun that we evaluate based on the damager's property, based on Reuven's property, based on Reuven's Edis. V'kavachom lehektish. And then certainly when it comes to hektish, my kavachom hektish. What's certainly? What about hektish? What does it mean certainly when it comes to hektish? So ilema de nogach Torah di don the Torah de hektish. So if you're saying, well, if Reuven's ox gores an ox of hektish, and that was going to be offered as a korban. So, and we're saying certainly in that case, then Reuven the Tycoon would have to pay with his edis. But the problem is that in that case there actually would be no payment, because there's no payment when Reuven's ox gores a hektish ox. The psukim that talk about an ox goring, what does the pasuk say? So it says the ox of his fellow, but not an ox of hektish. So maybe then it's talking about if a fellow says, so it's talking about in a situation where a fellow says, I'm going to give $100 to the Beis HaMikdash, and he doesn't do it. He doesn't give the $100. So then, does a gizbar v'shakil me'idis, and we're saying, so if a fellow says he's going to give $100 to the Beis HaMikdash, he doesn't do it. So now the treasurer comes to collect from his field, to take some of his property, because he's not paying the $100, so he's going to take $100 of property. So we're saying that kol shekain, in that case, the treasury can take from, let's say Reuven was the one who made the pledge, from Reuven's idus, from his best fields. But says the Gemara, that's not a good situation, because lo yei ela bal chov. In that case, the treasury is be'etzem a bal chov, a creditor. The treasury is owed money. Val chov b'beinonis. And if a creditor, when he collects property, because he wasn't paid back cash, when he collects property, he collects from beinonis, from medium property, not from idis. So v'chitei musab Rabbi Akiva kol bal chov nami b'idis. And if you're going to say, well, actually, Rabbi Akiva's opinion is that a creditor collects from idis. Okay, so therefore by hektish collects from idis, right? So meaning just like in general, a creditor collects from idis, so certainly by hektish as well, a creditor collects from idis. But we could say not. It's not so muvan me'elav. It's not so simple. Sure, maybe a creditor collects from idis, but not necessarily by hektish. Ma'leval chov shken yafa kol chov b'nezakin. I understand why a creditor, I could understand why a creditor can collect from idis, from the best fields, because after all, a creditor who's just a regular Joe, if a regular Joe gets damaged, so then he gets paid back, right? He gets paid the damages. But by hektish, as we just said a minute ago, there's no payment when it comes to hektish. So therefore by kind of regular creditor situation, where in regular situations there are also damages. If an ox gores, there's going to be damages. So here also, when a creditor comes to collect, he collects from a better. He collects from idis, from the best stuff. But when it comes to hektish, where it's kind of a lower kind of a thing, that, like, for example, if an ox gores an ox of hektish, there's no payment. So I might think that also when the gizbar collects from a fellow who hasn't paid his commitment, his pledge, so also they would kind of be in a lower position, and they wouldn't collect idis. I can argue that they would collect beinonis. So the olam de nogach tordidan the Torah hektish. So the Gemara says, really it's going back to our initial thought that we're saying that Rabbi Akiva says in Kal V'chomer, when it comes to hektish, that if Reuven's ox gores an ox of hektish, certainly he would have to pay back from his own idis. But as you pointed out earlier, but I thought that when it comes to hektish, there's no payment. That if Reuven's ox gores an ox of hektish, I thought that there's no payment at all. What do you mean that he would pay back from idis? I thought there's no payment at all. So Rabbi Akiva savila k'Reb Shimon ben Menashe. Well, Rabbi Akiva actually holds like Reb Shimon ben Menashe. The Tanya that we learn in the Brisa, Reb Shimon ben Menashe almost says Reb Shimon ben Menashe. Shor shel hektish shenogach shor shel hedjit potter. If an ox of hektish, somebody who's makdish an ox, he was going to offer an ox as a korban, and then that ox gores a regular ox, potter. So the owner of the hektish ox is potter. Shor shel hedjit shenogach shor shel hektish. But if a shore of a regular fellow gores a shore of hektish, bein tam bein mud mishalim nezek shalim. Whether the ox was a tam or a mud, you have to pay nezek shalim. So if Reuven's ox gores an ox of hektish, according to Shimon ben Menashe, not only would Reuven's ox would Reuven have to pay? But even if it was a short tam, he would have to pay nezek shalim. So we see, right now, in general, right, if Reuven's ox gores just another ox, so if it was a short time, it would pay chatzi nezek, half damages. But if it's a short shel hektish, he pays full damages, even if it's a short time. So we see, according to Shimon ben Manasseh, that there is payment when it comes to a short shel hektish. So we could say that Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh, that there is payment when if Reuven's ox gores an ox of hektish, and we're saying that payment would be from his edis, that if by a regular case Reuven has to pay from his edis, certainly when it comes to hektish, he would have to pay from his best fields from his edis. Okay, so if this is the case, by the way, we've seen this Gemara before. We saw this Gemara in Masechta Gittin. So now the Gemara asks, if this is the case, that Rabbi Akiva's opinion is that if Reuven's ox gores an ox of hektish, he would have to pay. So maybe, let's say that the machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva is actually limited to this exact thing of if Reuven's ox gores an ox of hektish, does he have to pay? Rabbi Shmuel says no, Rabbi Akiva says yes. Maybe that's the machlokas, but vis-a-vis a situation when Shimon's best fields are the same same value as Reuven's worst fields, maybe they both agree actually that it would be based on Shimon's best field, not based on Reuven's best field. Because after all, what does Rabbi Akiva say? All he says is lo ba'akasuv el legabus and nezakim and idis. He doesn't say anything about whether it's idis shel mazik, izik shel nizak. We understood it to mean that if Rabbi Shmuel is talking about the field of Shimon's field, the nizak's field, so it must be that Reuven's talking about the mazik's field. But the Gemara is suggesting maybe that's not actually the case. Maybe Rabbi Akiva agrees with Rabbi Shmuel that in that case it would be the nizak shaminan that we would evaluate based on Shimon's field. Where Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel argue, what they're arguing about is if Reuven's ox scores an ox of hektish, is there a payment? Rabbi Shmuel says no, Rabbi Akiva says yes. Maybe that's the machlokas. So again, so the Gemara says, if that's the case, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, in terms of the machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, how do we know that the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel is with regard to when Reuven's ox eats up Shimon's field, and Shimon's best field is the equivalent of Reuven's worst fields? And we said that Rabbi Shmuel says that b'denizak shaminon, Rabbi Akiva says b'demazik shaminon. Maybe they don't argue about that at all. Dilma d'chuliyam b'denizak shaminon. Maybe both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel agree that b'denizak shaminon, that we evaluate based on Shimon's best field, the nizak's best field, the one who got damaged. And maybe the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel is the machlokas between Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh and the Rabbanon. That Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh says that if Reuven's ox gores an ox of hektish, he does have to pay, and the Rabbanon say he doesn't. Rabbi Akiva saw Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh. Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh that he would have to pay. Rabbi Shmuel saw Rabbi Rabbanon, and Rabbi Shmuel was like the Rabbanon that he wouldn't have to pay if his ox scores an ox of hektish. Let's say that's the machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. So says the Gemara, Im Kain, my lo ba'akasuv. Well, if so, then what is the pasuk? Meaning, when he says lo ba'akasuv ella, meaning Rabbi Shmuel says b'denizak shaminon. Rabbi Akiva seems to be arguing on Rabbi Shmuel and saying, no, mapitom lo ba'akasuv ella. No, the pasuk is talking about something else. Meaning, if Rabbi Shmuel is talking about b'denizak shaminon, it must be Rabbi Akiva is arguing saying, no, mapitom b'demazik shaminon. That's first of all. Ve'od, my kavachom elektish. And additionally, if Rabbi Akiva is saying that in a situation where Shimon's edis is like Reuven's ziboris, if Rabbi Akiva agrees with Rabbi Shmuel that it's b'denizak shaminon, which is more lenient, then what's the kal v'chomer lehektish? I understand if Rabbi Akiva is being stringent in this case and saying b'demazik shaminon, and kal v'chomer that by case of hektish, which should of course be more stringent, b'demazik shaminon. But if we're saying that Rabbi Akiva is b'denizak shaminon, then what's the kal v'chomer? Kal v'chomer what in terms of hektish? The odd and additionally and more so, and here's kind of the knockout. Ha'omer of Ashi, Rav Ashi said, Tanya Behedra, that we have an explicit brisa. Meitav Sadeu, Meitav Karmu Yishalim, that it says that Reuven has to pay back Meitav Sadeu, Meitav Karmu. Meitav Sadeu shall nizak, Meitav Karmu shall nizak, Divrei Bishmal. Bishmal says it's talking about the field of the nizak and the vineyard of the nizak. So Rabbi Shmuel says it's talking about the nizak shaminon. Rabbi Kiva says Rabbi Kiva meitav sadeu shel mazik, or meitav karmu shel mazik. That we're talking about the Reuven. We're talking about the damagers edis. So there you have it. Rabbi Akiva's. We have a brisa in which we explicitly have the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that it's b'demazik shaminon. Friends, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I'm a little bit tired. It's not even that late. I don't know. I've been getting tired. We changed it. I don't know if I mentioned this already. We changed the clocks, less than a week ago. I don't know if maybe I'm like a little minor jet lag from that. I don't know, but I'm a tiny bit tired. But so far, I think my brain has still been working and. Well, we're gonna plow ahead. We got some more stuff over here. Some relatively interesting stuff. We gotta start using our brains. Then the next 2 days also, big time. We gotta use our brains. I've been calling it. You know what I've called it today? Not so much, but tomorrow I made up a name for what we call tomorrow's daf. Should I tell you now, or should I wait till tomorrow? I'll wait till tomorrow. All right. Ramile Abaye. Okay, so Abaye asked a kasha to Rav. Ksiv meitav sadeu meitav kaim yisham. So on the one hand, the pasuk says that Reuven needs to pay back Shimon meitav sadeu meitav kaim with his best fields. That's how he pays back Shimon, with his best fields. Meitavin midachvinu lo, his best fields, yes, not anything else. But we have a brayse that says Yoshiv, that when the pasuk says by a bor. Balabor Yishalim Kesef Yoshiv Leval Vamesi Yelo Lirabo Shvei Kesef Vafilu Subin, to include monetary equivalents, even bran. You can pay somebody back with bran. So we just went from on the one hand having a pasuk that say you have to pay back with your best fields, to saying you can also pay back with just bran. So we say Lokasha Kan Midaito Kan Bakorcho. So it depends how agreeable Reuven is. If Reuven says, oh gosh, oh dear, my silly ox just ate up Shimon's field. All right, Shimon, let me pay you right now. So in that case, he can, Shimon doesn't have to chase after Reuven, doesn't have to go to court. Reuven's just saying, look, my ox messed up, silly little ox, let me pay you. So since he's being easy and agreeable, so he can even pay back with just bran, with just subin. But if Reuven's saying like, I don't know what you're talking about, it was like that from before, and Shimon has to, right, Reuven's saying that, and then Shimon has to go to Bezdin, and it becomes a whole thing, well then we have no mercy. And we say, Reuven, you're a shmendrik, you have to pay back with your edis, with your best fields. That this makes sense to say this because it says Yeshalim Bal Korcho, right? He will pay against his will, right? Meaning when it says Meitav Sadeu, Meitav Kamu Yeshalim, he will pay. That even against his will, at this point he's going to have to pay with his best fields. Abaye says to Rav Miksiv Yeshulam. So Miksiv Yeshulam Yeshalim Ksiv. That it doesn't say Yeshulam that it will be paid, which is Afilu Akorchoch Yeshalim Ksiv. He will pay Midaito Mashma. It applies with his intention. So meaning, even if Reuven immediately says, oh gosh, my ox just ate your field, let me pay you back now, still he would have to pay Mimetav Sadeu. Okay, fine. Okay, very good. Okay, no. So Abai is saying that even if he's like agreeable, still he'd have to pay back from Metav Sadeu. Okay, no. Where am I? So Elo Amar Abai. Elo Amar Abai. Rather says Abai Kidemar. Rather, it's like what Rabbah says. It's like Mar. It's like Rabbah. The Tanya that we learn in the Brisa. Okay, here we go. Haresh ayulo batim sadu suchromim ve'eno motzi lemochron ma'chilin oso meiser ani ad mechza. Woof. What is this talking about? My oh my. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Param pam param pam param. So, okay, so of course there's right, there's leket, shichacha, peya, meiser ani. There are matnos aniyim, right? There are certain things that are available for poor people to collect and to eat. Leket, shichacha, peya, meiser ani. A poor person can collect these things and eat them. So the question is, how do you define a poor person? Who qualifies to be able to collect these things? So it's 200 zuz. If a fellow has 200 zuz, he's no longer a poor person, he cannot collect these things. So now the Gemara is talking about an interesting situation where you have a person who's pasha broke, but he owns sados, what was it? Batim, sados, chromim. So he has non-liquid assets, right? He has houses, he has vineyards, he has fields, he has all these things, but he's starving to death. He doesn't have he doesn't have money to buy a slice of pizza. Buy a slice of pizza. You can't buy a slice of pizza with a field. You buy a slice of pizza with money. He doesn't have any money. So here's kind of a funny thing. On the one hand, he's not a poor person because he has assets that are worth more than 200 zuz, but he can't buy a slice of pizza with assets. He needs cash. So the question is he considered a poor person? Can he collect matnos aniyim? On the one hand, he's broke. On the other hand, he's got assets that are worth enough that he wouldn't be considered poor. So again, the Tanya we learned about is you have a fellow, he's got houses, he's got fields, he's got vineyards. Ve'eno motzi lemochron. But he's not able to sell them. He's not able to sell them. He's trying to sell them. Nobody's interested. He's unable to sell them. He doesn't have any cash. He's broke. He's starving. Can he collect matnos aniyim or not? So ma'chilin also meiser ani ad mechza. So we can feed him meiser ani, so he can collect the matnos aniyim up to half the value of these illiquid assets that he's unable to get money for. So be'etzem he can eat matnos aniyim, he can eat meiser ani up until the value of half of his assets, and then he could sell he could sell the assets for even half of their value, and then he'll definitely find buyers. And then okay, so he's getting half the money for his properties, but he's also able to eat up to half of their value in matnos aniyim. V'avi b'amar, and Rabbi is trying to understand what exactly is this scenario where we're saying that he can eat meiser ani up to half of the value of these assets. If there was a recession, everybody's properties depreciated in value, and so did his. Well, then that means that he's poor. right? If there was a recession in the economy, and these assets that were worth enough that he wouldn't be considered poor, but now those assets depreciated in value globally, so now he doesn't. Now he's considered a poor person because the assets that he has aren't worth anything. So afilu tuva nami disvelei. Well, then he should be considered a poor person. He should be able to eat whatever he needs. He's a poor person. So why are we saying he can only eat half the value of the assets? No, so it's talking about a situation where, in general, real estate prices taka went up. So the value of his assets taka are worth quite a bit. But but in his case, I did the ayil v'nofik azuze zol are. But everybody knows though that he's broke and that he's in a weak negotiating position because he needs money to be able to buy food. So therefore, look, in general, property prices are going up, but because everybody knows that he's basically stuck because he's strapped for cash, he's going to be unable to get what he would like for it. But then afilu porta nami lo lisvele. But the Gemara wants to say, look, if the fact of the matter is that he owns these assets that are worth enough that he would not be considered poor, yeah, granted, people know that he's in a difficult position and in a weak negotiating position because he needs money, he's strapped for cash, so therefore people will be willing to give him less. But the fact of the matter is, these assets are worth enough that he would not be considered a poor person. So then he shouldn't, right? If he poor to Namilo, he shouldn't get anything. He's not a poor person. And Rabbah answers and he says, this is the scenario. Lo tzricha de biyome nisan yukara arisa uviyome tishrei zal arisa duchuli alma natra ad nisan umizabne v'hai hovit starchele zuze zavim kidehashta ad palga orche lemezel tvei lav orche lemezel. Chevre, did you get that? Probably not. So here the situation is, look, when it comes to selling fields, depending on what time of the year it is, the property can be worth more or less. What that means is, if a fellow is selling his property in Nisan, he can get more money for it. Why can he get more money for it? Because when you buy property in Nisan, you have enough time to plow the field, seed the field, do whatever you have to do for the field so that it will be ready for the rains in the winter, in the upcoming winter after Tishrei. It gives you half a year to get the rain ready so that already the first year you'll be able to benefit, to get the field ready. So already you'll be able to start getting benefit right away from the field. That season, you'll already be harvesting. You buy a field in Nisan, you have the summer to get it ready, it rains in the winter, already by the end of the year you're getting your first yield. Masha Ein Kain, if somebody sells the field in Tishrei, because if you sell the field in Tishrei, you kind of miss you're not going to be able to get everything ready in time by the time it starts raining. And therefore you be'etzem lose a year. You're going to have to wait for the next year because you missed your chance to be able to plant and ultimately harvest the field this year. So therefore, the price of fields are lower in Tishrei because it's a less advantageous thing to buy. Because you can't harvest that year. You're going to have to wait till the next year. So again, selling a field in Nisan, you can get a better price for it because then people will buy it and they'll get to work and they'll already be able to have a yield that year. But if you buy a field in Tishrei, which is mamish right before the winter starts, you're not going to have enough time to prep the field, so you're basically losing out on a season, so it's going to be a lower price. So again, so for Amar Marda and Rabbah says, Allah, regarding this scenario, Lo tzricha de biyome Nisan yukara arisa, that in Nisan property is more expensive, uviyome Tishrei zol arisa, and in Tishrei property is less expensive, that everyone generally people would wait till Nisan in order to sell their field so that they can get more money for it. But this person, it's right now Tishrei. Now most people in Tishrei would wait to sell their field until Nisan, but he can't. He's strapped for cash. He needs the money, so he has no choice but to sell his field in Tishrei at a discounted price. So Zavin Kidashta, so he sells his field based on the current price in Tishrei, and at Palga Orche Lemezel, and the price of a field in Tishrei would only go so low, it wouldn't go more than half the price that it would be in Nisan, half the proper price. Tvei lav orche lemezel, but not more than that. And therefore, that explains why you can collect Meiser Ani up until half of the value of his assets. Because we assume that when he sells his assets now in Tishrei, he can get at least half of the value of the assets at the time that you would like to sell them in Nisan. But in Tishrei, it wouldn't be less than half the value, and therefore you can collect Meiser Ani up until half the value of the assets, assuming that then he's going to sell the assets at a steep discount, which would be no less than half of their value. So between the Meiser Ani and the money that he receives from the sale, that would be enough. Okay. So that is why we suggest that he receives half of the value in Matnos Aniyim, and then he sells the property. Fine. Okay. So now, where am I? Okay. So now getting back to our question of the scenario where, right, we said on the one hand it says Meitav Sadeh, Meitav Karma Yishalim, you got to pay with your best fields. On the other hand it says you can even pay bran. So we say, well, let's apply this also to the following case. V'achanami here as well, Gabe Nizakin. When it comes to damages, Dine Be'idis. So in general, it would be Be'idis. Shimon would have to pay back with his best fields. Where am I? The Amarle Iu. But if Reuven, wait, who's Reuven and Shimon? No, we gotta get back to our examples. So Reuven's cow ate Shimon's field. So Shimon is entitled to collect from Reuven's Edis, from his best fields. Like the pasuk says, Meitav Sadeh, Meitav Karma Yishalim. But V'i Amarle Ihu, but if instead Shimon suggests to Reuven, Havli Beinonis Tvei Porta, give me Beinonis instead, a little bit more. For whatever reason, maybe the Beinonis is closer to his own fields, whatever it might be. Shimon says to Reuven, look, don't pay me back with Edis, pay me back with Beinonis, but just, give me a little bit more Beinonis. The quality of the field is not as good, so just give me a little bit more Beinonis instead of a little bit less Edis. Omarle. And Reuven then says to Shimon, look, Ishaklas Kidincha Shkol Kidashta. Look, so now, and this is of course happening in Tishrei. In Tishrei, when properties are less. Okay? So Reuven's ox eats Shimon's field in Tishrei. Now, in Tishrei, the prices of fields are lower, which would be a great opportunity for Shimon to be able to collect from Reuven at a bargain price. Right? Meaning Reuven's ox ate Shimon's field, right? Ate Shimon's stuff. So now Shimon's got these damages, right? He's owed $1,000 in damages. Shimon now goes to Reuven and says, you owe me $1,000 worth of property. It's right now Tishrei. In Tishrei, property is worth less. It's less expensive. So Shimon can buy more of it. Now Shimon then suggests to Reuven, he says, look, instead of paying me, right, Shimon says to Reuven, instead of paying me Edis, pay me a little bit more Beinonis. To which Reuven responds, look, he says, look, Me'ikar Adin, the Torah says that you're allowed to collect from my Edis. And therefore, as long as you're sticking to what the Torah says, well then yeah, I have no choice but to give you, to pay you back with the Edis at the current price, which is a cheaper price. But if you, Shimon, want to switch things up and say, nah, I don't want Edis, I want Beinonis, well, then I'm no longer obligated to give you the current cheaper price. I'm happy to give you a Beinonis property, but at the price that I would normally receive for it, which is I would wait till Nisan when it's more expensive, so you'd only get Beinonis at the more expensive price. Right, so again, so Amalei Ishakal Kedin Chashkol, Reuven says to Shimon, look, if you're going to collect, like the Torah says you're entitled to collect, which is from Edis, well then Shkol Kedashto, you can get the current price of Tishrei, which is less expensive. Ve'ilo, but if you don't want Edis, and instead you want Beinonis, Lo Shakil Ve'ilo Shakil Kiyukra Tilkame. Well then, you can collect from my Beinonis, but only at the prices that I would normally seek for it, which is I would wait till Nisan when it's more expensive. And therefore we want to say, so it's like a funny kind of comparison to our case, I think, but in our case we were talking about Meitav Sadeh, Meitav Kami Yishalim on the one hand, but also the bran. So we're saying, look, that refers to the fact that Shimon can collect either from the Edis, which is like Meitav Sadeh, Meitav Kaimo, or from the bran, which is, or from the Benoni, which is like the equivalent of the bran. So, okay, we want to say that is how it connects. But Maskefler of Acha Bayakov says, I don't understand. Orata Kochon Shonazakin Eitzel Beninus Viziboris. If that's the case, though, Rav Acha Bayakov asks, you're basically making it more difficult for him when it comes to Beinonis and Ziboris. Right? Meaning, what we just said is Reuven could say to Shimon, look, Shimon, if you want to collect from my Edis, which is the best stuff, so then, yeah, okay, fine. So you can collect at the current rate, at the current price, which is a cheaper price. But if you want sort of lower fields, then you have to pay a higher price. So that means that we're basically, making it more difficult for Shimon when it comes to Ziboris and Beinonis. But the Torah says, Meitav. The Torah says we want to help out Shimon. We want to give him even from the best stuff. We want to help him out. Give Shimon the best possible stuff after, the experience of Reuven's ox destroying his field. And you're saying, no, it's either to the exclusion of Beinonis. His options are limited. If he wants from the Beinonis and the Ziboris, he has to settle for a more expensive price. But the whole point is we want to benefit Shimon. So therefore it doesn't make sense to say that, if he wants a Beinonis, then he's going to have to take a more expensive price. Look, if we're looking for a situation that would be similar to the Matnos Anim, to this fellow who has non-liquid assets, and he's trying to sell them so that he can eat, and it's Tishrei, and we say, we talk about, well, there's the lower price in Tishrei, so it would be similar to this. Baal Chov Dine Bebeinonis, that a Baal Chov Dine Bebeinonis, right? Of course, if Shimon lends Reuven $1,000, and it comes time to pay him back, and Reuven doesn't have the money, so Shimon can collect from Reuven's property. He can collect from Beinonis. Now, if Shimon says to Reuven, you know what, don't pay me back with Beinonis, pay me back with Ziboris. I prefer Ziboris, the lower quality fields, but just give me more of it. So Amarle, and of course this is in Tishrei, so Reuven says to Shimon, look, Ishaklas kidincha shkol kedashta. Look, if you want to collect from property based on what the din is, which is Beinonis, well then you can get it for the better price, for the Tishrei price. Ve'ilo, but if you don't want to collect from Beinonis, which is what maker din you're entitled to, you want to collect from Ziboris, shkil ki yukur dilkame, well then I'll only be willing to give it to you at the the Nissan rate, which is a higher rate. But Maskifla Rav Acha Bre Tervika, Rav Acha Bre Tervika says, I don't understand. Im Kenat Delas B'fnei Lovid. If that's the case, you're going to make it difficult for people to get loans, right? Reuven got $1,000 loan from Shimon. Shimon wants to come and collect it. Shimon says, look, I want to collect from Ziboris. Reuven says, look, if you want to collect from Ziboris, you're going to pay a premium. Shimon's going to say, to heck with this, I'm never lending ever again. This is such a headache. The Amarle, Shimon's going to say, Ilu havuli zuze. If I had the $1,000, i.e. if I didn't lend it to you, if it was in my pocket, have a shakli kida ashta, I wanted to right now use those $1,000 in my pocket to buy Ziboris land right now in Tishrei, I would be able to get a better price. I'd be able to get a Tishrei price. Hashta dezuze gabach, but now that I don't have the $1,000 in my pocket because I was a silly person, I lent it to you and you're being difficult. Eshko kiyuka dilkame, and now it can't get paid back with the Ziboris at the current price. I have to pay a higher price. If I never lent you that $1,000 in the first place and I had it in my pocket, I'd be able to buy Ziboris land right now for the current prices. And now that I did you a favor and I lent you $1,000 and I want to get paid back with Ziboris land, I have to do it at a higher price. The heck with this. I should have never have lent you the $1,000. And guess what? I'm not going to ever lend anybody $1,000 again. And now the next person who needs a loan will be unable to get it. And the Amr Rav Acha Bre Ravika, rather says Rav Acha Bre Ravika, Yikal Damuye Lichsubas Isha. Meaning, rather, if we want this case of like the Nissan prices and the Tishrei prices, so then it's talking about a ksuba. The Ksubas Isha Dina Biziboris. That Ksubas Isha, right, a fella gets divorced and she wants to collect her Mana Masayim, right, and I guess the Nedunya, she wants to collect from so she's entitled to collect from Ziboris. The Amrlan, if she says to him, Havli Beinonis Botzer Porta, look, instead of giving me from Ziboris, can you pay me back with Beinonis, which is better field, but less of it? On my law, the ex-husband says, Ishaklas Kedincha Kedinach Shkol Kedashta. Look, if you want to accept what you're entitled to accept, which is Ziboris, I will give you Ziboris at the current Tishrei prices. But if you want Beinonis, well then, Shakli Kiyukra Dilkame, then I'll only pay you back, pay you from Beinonis at sort of the prices that I would usually prefer to sell at, which is the Nissan prices. Okay, so that's the case of that, right? That's similar to Rabbah with the Tishrei prices and the Nissan prices. Mikomakum kasha. Very good. We get back to our initial question of what's the deal? Why in the one hand it says Meitav Sadeh, Meitav Kamri, Yishalim, that we're talking about the best stuff. On the other hand, we're saying it could even be bran. So Amar Rava called Yoiv Le Meitav Leisivle. So Rava suggests what it means. No, those two things are not mutually exclusive. On the one hand, we're saying that Shimon has to pay from his best stuff. On the other hand, we're saying he can even pay bran. What it means is that those two things are not contradictory. On the one hand, we're saying that if Shimon has Edis fields, Beinonis fields, Ziboris fields, he's got to pay from the Edis. And we're also saying that he can even pay bran, meaning if he's got Edis bran, which I guess comes from Edis wheat, or Beinonis bran, or Ziboris bran, he's got to pay from the Edis bran. Rava says that's all it's saying. What it's saying is that Shimon does not have to pay back with land, but whatever he pays back with should be the best. That's what it's saying according to Rava. Where am I? Rava called the Yoivle Meitav Leisivle. Meitav Sadeu Ksiv. It doesn't say that it could just be anything. It says Meitav Sadeu, his field. Selekasar a papa. Rather, this is a papa of Rav Huna Bred of Yeshua Mibe Rav. When Rav Papa and Rav Huna Bred of Yeshua came from the Beis HaMedrash, Parshua, they explained it. Kol Mile Meitav Hu. Look, anything that's like metaltalin, right? That if Shimon's I guess Reuven's gonna pay Shimon. I don't even know who's Reuven and Shimon. I'm getting shtickle tired, so I don't know who's Reuven and Shimon anymore. But if Reuven's gonna pay Shimon with metaltalin, well then that's metaltalin can always be called meitav because the ilom is da ben ochom is da matach rise. Because metaltlin, you go to one place, you say, hey, this is my price. People don't want it. But you go to another place, people will be happy to pay for it. So anything could, relatively speaking, be called meitav. But but when it comes to property, it's not like that because it's stationary. It's in one place, and you have to, therefore, davka give the meitav. He's got to give davka his best stuff when it comes to property, and that is what when it says meitav, right? It's got to be the best fields or the brand. So it's saying, look, the point is that Shimon should be able to easily convert these things that he's getting paid back with into money. So when it comes to brand, when it comes to metaltlin, it doesn't have to be from the edis, because it can always be edis depending on where you go. People might value it more. Well, you might go to a certain place and they value it quite a bit. When it comes to karka, though, it davka needs to be meitav sadeu to make sure that people would be willing to buy it and that he can get the money for it. Okay, Givaldik, friends, that was daf Zayin of Masechta BavaKama, the first part of the daf. We continued on the machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, explaining Rabbi Akiva's opinion that, first reinforcing Rabbi Akiva's opinion that it's b'demazik shaminan, and that this would apply to hektish as well, that if his ox scored an ox of hektish, he would have to pay from the edis of the mazik. And then we got into the question of, the distinction between meitav sadeu and the fact that it says you can even pay with bran. We tried to give different answers, and that led us on a whole journey. But ultimately, Rava suggested that it means that, whatever you're going to pay back with, it should be the best. And Rav Papa, Rafuni Bar David Shua made a distinction between metaltlin and karka, that a field would have to davka be the best, but metaltlin, it could even be brand, because, relatively speaking, some places might value something more. Friends, that was the Zayin of Masechta BavaKama. Hope you enjoy. Peace out.